Okay, good morning. We are on Yud Ches Amud Beis, about 15 lines up from the bottom. We're continuing the sugya that we discussed yesterday. So the sugya that we discussed yesterday was whether or not the dead know. The pasuk seemed pretty clear that said that the dead did not know. V'hamesim einam yodim me'uma. And Reb Chia had told Rabbi Yonasan that if that's how you learned the pasuk, you didn't understand it. What does it mean that Mesim Enim Yodim Uma, the dead don't know? It means that it's a reference to the fact that the people who are alive, who don't know that they're dying, who don't understand that life is short, and ultimately one has to be preparing in this world for life in the next. One has to be acting in an appropriate way. So that's what it means by Mesim Enim Yodim Uma. They don't; these people who are alive, but they're like they're dead because they're not aware in life. They're not trying hard in life to make themselves fit or make themselves be more appropriate for the next world. Be it as it may, we had tried a number of different proofs yesterday to see if we could make the point to show that the dead know, and we had rejected each one of those proofs. Today is another proof. The Gemara says as follows, 15 lines up from the bottom. So the Gemara says we have a Maisa here about Avua de Shmuel. Toshma, the Avua de Shmuel Haviko Mafkidi Gabe Zuzi de Asme, the father of Shmuel. He was known as Avua de Shmuel. He was a big personage in his own right, but given how great Shmuel was, he was known as Avua de Shmuel. So he was the person who they used to deposit the money of his Simon with him. When he passed away, Shmuel wasn't there. They called Shmuel the son of one who is eating the money of Yisrael. In other words, they were saying that Avud Shmuel, the father of Shmuel, was stealing money from the Yisraelim. And they called Shmuel the one who is the son of somebody who eats up the zuzim of the Yisraelim. I'm reminded when I see this that when you take a great person and you disparage him by calling him somebody who steals, who cheats, this is not such a big deal that they called Avud Shmuel Bar Achol Zuzit Asme. They called him somebody who eats. Look at the Gemara in Shkolim. The Gemara in Shkolim tells us in Parak Hey on the pasuk of Bitu Achar Moshe. What does it mean that they stared after Moshe? Chadam L'Shvach, Chadam L'Gnad. The Gemara says, what is the mandam who says L'Shvach? Oh, how amazing that Yelid Isha is able to come so great. What about the Chadam L'Gnai? Why are they staring after Moshe Rabbeinu? What was so bad about Moshe Rabbeinu? So the Gemara says there in Shkolim that Cham and Shokin, Cham and Karen, Cham and Kapin, Akum the Udoi. You know why his legs are so fat? You know why he's so rotund? Because he's stealing our money. They said it about Moshe Rabbeinu. It's not such a big deal that they said it about the father of Shmuel. So Ozil Abbas Moves. So Shmuel, he doesn't know what to do. They're really demeaning his father, and they're saying that he stole the money of the assignment that was deposited with him. So he goes to the cemetery. He goes to the Moves to what? Go find his father to see what's going on. So he gets to the cemetery. He says, "Ba'ina Abba." He says, "I need not Abba in the sense of a father." He says, "I need Abba." Says Rashi. That was his name. I need Abba. Amrle Abba Tuva Igach. He says a lot of Abbas here. Rashi explains that he's there in the cemetery. Hamesim nigul lekilu heim chutzim mikvereim mikevreim v'yoshem magula. It's like everybody was to Shmuel sitting outside their graves and sitting in a circle. Now you may be bothered, but why is it that he just didn't go to the actual grave? Like, why didn't he just ask somebody, where did you bury my father? Where's his grave? I'm not 100% sure, but there is another Yerushalmi happens to be the Gemara in Shkolim over there also. But the Gemara in Shkolim, which the Rambam brings down the halacha, the Rambam says, based upon that Gemara there in Parak Beis, that ein oisen nefashos tzaddikim, because the ram ein the ram right there, the words of the tzaddikim, the Torah that they said, that's their memory. So you don't have to make a nefesh, you don't have to make a kever matzeva for a person who passed away, because the ram, the words, their Torah that they said, that's going to be enough of a memory of them. So I'm wondering if that's what happened over here. Avud Shmuel is a great rabbi personage in his own right. So when they buried him, they didn't give him a tzion. They didn't give him a marker. So therefore, he has no idea where his father is. So he has to find out. From who's he asking? He's asking the people in the cemetery. No, where's the Abba? Where's this person's name? Amalei Abba Tuva Ikach. There's a lot of Abbas. So Amarlo Beina Abba Bar Abba. I need somebody whose name is Abba Bar Abba. Amalei Abba Bar Abba Nami Tuva Ika. There's also a lot of Abba Bar Abbas. So Amarlo Beina Abba Bar Abba Avua de Shmuel. I need Abba Bar Abba, the father of Shmuel. So Amarle Slikum Sivas Derikia. But notice here before we get any further, the lashon that he says about his father. You see, he could have said, "Where's Avua de Shmuel buried?" But you see, Shmuel doesn't call his father Avua de Shmuel. Right? We know they have to have respect for your parents even after their death. And one of the ways you have respect of a parent is in terms of calling them by their name. So Shmuel refers to his father as Abba, or the appellation or whatever he was known by, which was certainly more respectful than calling him the Abu de Shmuel. Where's the father who's known by my father? Right? Abu de Shmuel is the way everyone else knows him, but it's not necessarily the most, and certainly by Kavadik in the sense that for a father to know that his son is so great. But for Shmuel's perspective, to call his father Abu de Shmuel is not appropriate. So he calls his father Abba, Abba bar Abba. Fine, if you still don't know who he is, Abba bar Abba Abu de Shmuel. Then he'll put in his own name, and then of course they know exactly who he is. And that's number one. Number two. So he says I need to find him because I have this issue right with the money of the servant that was deposited with him. So Amrulay slick the somehow he has to go to the Masifta Dirakia. The other dead people are hanging out downstairs. He has to go upstairs to the Masifta Dirakia. What does the Masifta Dirakia sound like? It sounds like the kind of a situation where you have a yeshiva, right? As we're going to see. There's a yeshiva upstairs. So he goes, ad hachi. He goes upstairs to go to the yeshiva. How does he go to the yeshiva? The Gemara here doesn't seem to make it that it was complicated. But if you remember, there is a Gemara in Ksubas in Zion and Beis. The Gemara there tells us the whole Ma'aser of Shuman Levi. In order to get up, and he was traveling with Elio, right, with the Malach HaMos, I'm sorry, and he jumps into Gan Eden, takes the sword. Whether it was appropriate or not is a whole Gemara over there. But in order to get in, it was complicated. Here, it sounds like he just is able to waltz his way in to Gan Eden, able to see what's going on there. That's number one. Number two, so now he's in heaven. He's at the Masif Dirikia. And he sees Levi is standing outside the yeshiva. And the Masif Dirikia, and Levi's outside the yeshiva. So he says, why are you sitting outside the yeshiva? My time lo salakta. Why don't you go inside the shir? Right? He's not on coffee break. He understands there's a problem. Why is he not in shir? The people who I guess minding the yeshiva said to me, "Kol kihana chshoni lo salakta l'msivos de Rabbi Apis v'achalashte lo daite." There were many years that you didn't go to Rabbi Apis' shir, and you caused them a chalish das. So lo malin and lach l'msif derikiyah. So we're not letting you into the shir upstairs, into the celestial yeshiva shir. So what does this mean? So you have to go to the Gemara Ksubas Kuf Gimel. Rashi brings down a little bit about the story. What happened is that when Rebbe passed away, he gave a lot of different instructions about various things. Among the instructions that Rebbe gave was that Rebbe Becham was Yeshiv B'Rosh. Rebbe Becham refused to sit there because Rebbe Apis was 2.5 years older than him. So Rebbe Apis became the head of the shir, and then Rebbe Apis passed away. Rebbe Becham took over the shir. During the period when Rebbe Apis was giving a shir, Rebbe Chanina, who was the one who was supposed to be appointed, who Rebbe said should be the one who's going to do it, didn't take the job, but he also didn't sit in the yeshiva. Rebbe Chanina sat outside. Why? Deloy Kayef, right? Because he wasn't submissive to Rebbe Apis. He gave Rebbe Apis the position because he was older than him, but not because he was more senior than him. So he sat outside, and Levi learned Rebbe Chanina. So the Gemara then continues, and that's what the Gemara here is presumably referring to, is that he didn't go into the shir. But you have to continue on in the Gemara over there, because the Gemara says that when Rabbi Apis died, Rabbi Chanina is Malach. Rabbi Chanina now takes over. And the Gemara says that Levi had no one left to learn with, so he goes to Bavel. Why did he have no one left to learn with? Because Rabbi Chanina, who was learning outside, is now inside. He's now giving the shir. And Levi is like, I'm not kaif to Rabbi Chanina. I'm not submissive to him. So he went to Bavel. And when he comes to Bavel, so they say over Shita that he says, oh, so Rav is there. And Rav says, oh, it's clear that Rabbi Abbas has died. Rabbi Chanina Bar Chama is now the Rashiva, and Levi's here in Bavel. They say, how did Rav know all this? Maybe it was that Rabbi Chanina had passed away, and Levi had nobody left to learn with. And so Levi came to Bavel because they had no one left to learn with because his chavrusa passed away. How did Rav know that Rabbi Abbas was the one who passed away? So the Gemara gives two answers. One answer of the Gemara over there was that when Rabbi was geyser, that Rabbi Abbas, that Rabbi Chanina was going to be Yosef Rosh, there's no way that Rabbi's gezer wouldn't be Mekayim. For sure, Rabbi Chanina would have to take over the position before he passed away. So that's number one possibility. But the second possibility the Gemara says, actually the Gemara uses this as the first reason over there, is the Gemara says that what's the reason that Levi was sitting outside? He was sitting outside because he was keeping Rabbi Chanina company. He was keeping Rabbi Chanina company. He was learning Rabbi Chanina. So Rav understood that if he's over here now, was because of the fact that it was no longer ability to learn Rabbi Chanina. Why would it be no longer ability to learn Rabbi Chanina? Was because Rabbi Chanina had now been taken over. But had Rabbi Chanina passed away, said the Gemara, and Rabbi Abbas was still given a share, then Levi would have gone to the share. Because Levi wasn't kayef to Rabbi Chanina, but he was kayef to Rabbi Abbas. So according to this answer of the Gemara, what does it mean then? It means that why did Levi sit outside the share? Not to be chutzpahdik to Rabbi Abbas, but rather to keep Rabbi Chanina company, because Rabbi Chanina, who should have had the job, who didn't take the job out of humbleness to let Rabbi Abbas have the job, so he was helping Rabbi Chanina. He wasn't doing it to hurt Rabbi Abbas. And nevertheless, what does the Gemara say? Rabbi Abbas was Chalish's das. And that Chalish's das was enough to keep Levi out of the Masif Derakia, even though, according to this answer of the Gemara, he had no intention of that at all. Continues the Gemara. So Shmuel wants to know why Levi is sitting outside. So he says to him that the reason he can't come in is because of the fact that he caused Chalish's das to Rabbi Abbas. Continues the Gemara. So after a while, his father came by. He saw his father was crying and laughing. My time. He says, why are you crying? He says, because you're coming up. You're coming up here. In other words, you know I don't know if I said the story. I heard this story from my van driver in fifth grade, who said, an Italian guy, and he said there was two buddies. Later on, I saw in the Reader's Digest. There were two buddies, and they were very good friends, and they were friends when they were little kids. They used to play softball together, and baseball, and when they were getting older, playing softball, and one of them got sick, and they said, is there baseball in heaven? So they promised each other that when the guy dies, who's sick, he's going to come back, he's going to tell him. So he comes back after he passed away, and he says, I got good news and bad news. Yeah. So which one you want first? He says, okay, give me the good news. There's baseball in heaven. Oh, okay. So what's the bad news? You're pitching tomorrow night. Right? A little too early for that. So he sees his father. His father's crying and laughing. What do you mean crying and laughing? He says, Dad, no, why are you crying? Because you're coming here. My time. So why are you so happy? The Chashir is by Amud Yomi. He says, you're really important. Right? You're really important up here in heaven. So you just mentioned that in terms of the fact that he was saying that Shmuel is coming up, and why isn't that by definition? Why isn't that by definition a proof that the dead know? But Motzi l'shnua Taisa says, Taisa says, you see, you can't say Duma is the one who made an announcement right that Shmuel is coming up, because it sounds like this is not so close to his death as that when Duma would make an announcement. So maybe you'll see that the dead know. Okay, as we'll see. So so you see that that perhaps we can't say Duma over here. So we'll have to see in a minute. Says the Gemara. So Shmuel's father is laughing and crying. Shmuel's going to die, and he's coming up to heaven in a very dignified, honorable way because he's very respected. So Shmuel says back, if I'm so respected, I'm like, if I'm so respected, if everybody here thinks my opinion is important, so put Levi in shir. So the Gemara says they put him back in the shir. So then they get down to the brass tacks. Omar le zuzi dias mehecha. So he asked the father, where is the money for the assignment? Amar le zil shakilnu ba'amsa derechia. So he says the money is by the mill, by the mill. Al yavata toy didon. The money that's on top, this money is in three packages. The money that's on top and on the bottom is didon. That's our money. Umitzoy diasme. And the middle money is belonging to the assignment. So Amar le my time avarat hachi. He says to the dad, so why exactly did you do it this way? No, why did you do it this way? So Amarle, Iginuve Ganve, Meganvo de Mididon. He says if they're going to steal when they're digging, they'll take the first amount of money and they'll take that and they'll go on, and that'll be our money that's a loss. Or they went from the bottom, they took that money, that'll be our loss. The if the earth is going to come and ruin the money, I don't know what kind of currency they had in those days, but if the earth was going to ruin it, then it would ruin hopefully the one that was on top and the bottom first, and the one in the middle would be state. So the point over here is that eventually, of course, Shmuel is able to get the money, and the story in that sense is happily ever after. They stopped calling Abu the Shmuel Bar Ochel Zuzi Diasme. But for our purposes now, why are we bringing down this Gemara? Alma Diyadi. You see that they know, as Rashi explains, Mi Choshev Ben Achayim. You see that the Abu the Shmuel knows who's Choshev, right? He knows that his son is a very, very important person, very Choshev person. So says the Gemara, Dilma Shiny Shmuel, Kevin the Chashiv, Kevin the Choshev, Kad Me'umachres, Panu Mokayim. Who says that that the dead know what's going on? Maybe it was because when Shmuel was coming up there, they're saying, make a place, make way because a very important person's coming. So that's how he knows that he's important. Okay, so maybe not a proof. Nevertheless, we have tried on this whole Amud here various proofs to try to show that the dead know. At this stage of the Gemara, it's not necessarily 100% clear that there is an eisen proof that the dead know what's going on in this world. Nevertheless, says the Gemara, V'af Rabbi Yonasan Hadarbe. Rabbi Yonasan, the one who we just had the story about on Chesam and Aleph, with Rabbi Chia on the Darshan, the Pasuk, V'amesim and Yodim Me'uma. Nevertheless, you see that Rabbi Yonasan is Hadar. Rabbi Yonasan eventually agrees to Rabbi Chia that the dead know. Right? This has practical impacts for a variety of reasons, but certainly, in part, it has relation to do with what we call intercessory prayer. Rabbi Nishtateach al Kivrei Avis, more in Seidah Chav Gimel about Kaleb ben Yefuna. Right? The pasuk says that Vayalu ba'negev vayavoy ad Chevron. What do you mean? Why is it vayavoy singular? It says vayalu. It's in plural, right? All the spies together. So why is it vayavoy ad Chevron? Only one person came. So the Gemara over there says because Kalev went alone to Mishtateach HaKivrei Avos to tell the daven to the Avos that it should be matzel from the plot of the spies, and this relates to again when people daven. Do they daven? Are they davening that the dead should intercede to be Me'elis Yosher? Like, what is the level of appropriateness? Is it appropriate to go to a base like far? Is it appropriate to daven? Is it appropriate to daven to the Mason? Like, what level is it right or not right? Would have something to do with the fact if the dead know. If the dead don't know anything, the more acknowledged so far that the one thing that the dead know is kosher rima lameis kemacha b'v'sarachai. That when the bodies are being disintegrated, when they're being eaten up by the maggots, then that is painful for the neshama, like a pin would be pricking somebody's skin. That the Gemara has acknowledged that and everybody said that is in fact the case. But that's only tzara day. That's only your own side. That's only awareness of your own pain. It doesn't say about knowing anything about what's going on in the world. It doesn't say anything about knowing what's going on with the outside of your own physical body and what it's suffering as it disintegrates. So the Gemara says, but Rabbi Yonasan himself was Hadar. Why was he Hadar? We don't know. Says the Gemara as follows. The Amar Rabbi Shmuel ben Nachmani and Rabbi Yonasan, right? This is the famous Rabbi Shmuel ben Nachmani always says over the name of Rabbi Yonasan. As I said before, sometimes you see in shots we had one thing before Amar Rabbi Yochanan, but generally speaking, it's Amar Rabbi Yonasan. Minayin lemeisim shemesaprim zeh imzeh. How do you know, right, that the dead are talking with each other? Shenem Avayim Hashem love the pasuk really at the end of Zayis Brachot. Zayis ha'aretz asher nishbati la'Avraham li'Yitzchak li'Yaakov li'Mor. Right, Hashem is telling Moshe Rabbeinu that he can see the land. Harisicha be'einecha v'shama lo yisav. He's not able to go inside it. So the pasuk is saying that the land that I promised to Avram Avinu and Yitzchak and Yaakov, etc., lemor, saying, what is the lemor? My lemor. What do you mean saying? What are they saying? Amar Kodesh Baruch Hu Moshe Lech Emor Lahem LaAvram LiYitzchak LiYaakov Shavua Shenishbati Lachem Kvar Kiyamti Levnechem. That the oath that I took for with you, that I was ready to Mekayim Zayin this oath with your children. What do you mean? The Mekayim Zayin that I'm going to give them the land. The point here just to mention is that when we say that the shua Hashem took, who's Mekayim for with the great grandchildren who are now coming into Eretz Yisrael. Remember the Gemara earlier. Right, we had a Gemara earlier. The Gemara told us on Tess, right? The Gemara said that remember the Gemara said that Lashon Naz Lashon Makash Amalek Kodesh Baruch Hu Moshe Makash Mim Chalech Ve'Amar Lahem LiYisrael Makash Mekem Shalom Mitzrayim Klei Chesed V'Klei Zov Shlo Yomer Isei Tzadik V'Avodim V'Inu Isam Kiyim Behem V'Achar Chen Yetzi B'Chush Gadol Lo Kiyim Behem. Right. So to my mind, that the dead are going to know about the fact that the Zoyis Ha'aretz Hashem Nishbati LaAvram Litzchak Yaakov, that I've given them, that I've kept my promises, and they know that, they're aware of that. Well, obviously, we have other Gemaras. Avram is going to be very upset if the Jewish people don't get out. B'Chush Gadol is going to be angry because Avodim V'Inu Isam Kiyim Behem. But V'Achar Chen Yetzim B'Chush Gadol Lo Kiyim Behem. So you see that the dead. There's a lot of examples. I don't think this had to be the only example. I'm not 100% sure why we ended up going with this pasuk. We could have brought up other examples. Nevertheless, what you see over here is that Hashem is telling Moshe Rabbeinu that he has to go tell Avram Yitzchak and Yaakov that the shvuah that Hashem had promised that I'm going to give the land to your descendants, then in fact he kept it. The Isaac Adartik the Loyadi says more now on the top of your test. If you're going to say that the dead don't know, meaning, as Rashi points out, they know about the Tzara de Gufa, they know about the Rima, Rima Lameis. They understand that if it's their own pain, but that's it. So if that's all that they know, if you're going to say that they don't know except anything about their own pain, so Kiyamalu might have it. So then you're going to tell them something. What does it mean? What is it going to do? Elamai Diyadi. Must be that they know, they understand, they appreciate what's going on, and not only appreciate what's going on, they're going to be happy to hear about the fact that Hashem has kept the promise, and now the Jewish people are coming into the land of Israel. So says the Gemara, so then if they do know, if they know, and if somehow they're aware of what's going on, so then why does Moshe have to tell them anything? If they know, then wouldn't they know without that? So the Gemara says, so they to be able to give a thank you to Moshe Rabbeinu, right? Of course they know, but ultimately it's a way of saying Yasher Koach. Right? Sometimes you say something to somebody, it's not a requirement per se because the person's aware, but nevertheless, it's a way of being makir tov. So Hashem wants Moshe Rabbeinu to get a Yasher Koach, so they're gonna say Yasher Koach to Moshe Rabbeinu for helping this mission along, for being the Mashiach Shal Yisrael. This ultimately is a pasuk that convinces Reb Yonasan to be hadar. That, like I say, I don't really understand why it happens to be this pasuk. I think there's other examples. I think it could have worked to be teaching the same idea. Nevertheless, Rabbi Yonasan, who had wanted to translate the pasuk of Amazing and Yedim Me'uma as the pasuk pshat that they don't know, now he's willing to say that they do know. And again, so many Maimar Chazal would seem to indicate that the dead have a certain awareness in Chazal's mind. Again, I'm not saying the pasuk pshat in the psukim mind, but in Chazal's mind, it was certainly very clear that the dead have an awareness of what's going on here in this world. Okay, so continue to Gemara. One more little point on this. Anybody who's talking about the dead is as though he's speaking after a stone. What does it mean? There are those that say because the dead don't know, right? So you're talking about them, but it has no meaning because they're not aware. And others say no, it's they're aware, but now in the supernal realms, now living with the comfort of their Rebbeinu Shalom, so they don't care about these things anymore. Right? The fact that you're talking about them, talking trash about the dead, it's like if we just saw. I should have mentioned. I didn't mention that the Masifta de Rakia. Right? Remember, we had a Gemara on Zion, where the Gemara also talked about what it was like in the supernal realms. And remember what the Gemara said? The Gemara said over there that what was the vision? The vision was that in the future world, tzaddikim yeshim atarisem b'reshem v'nenem miziv hashchina. Right? Is that vision of the world when people are just being nana from the ziv hashchina? Do you care what somebody's saying about you here on earth? Like you're gazing on the infinite. You're thinking about the most incredible works of the Rebbeinu Shalom. Just then that alone, to just be thinking about the Rebbeinu Shalom's existence, what it means to be such an infinite power that you have now, no longer bound by your finite body, you can have such an appreciation, a little bit, of what the Rebbeinu Shalom is. So not what the peons, what the ants are saying over here, you care. Nobody cares. One last thing to just mention before we move on is that I did wonder about these Gemaras. On the one hand, we talk about the next world being the Masifta de Rakia. It sounds like it's the yeshiva. On the other hand, it sounds like the tzaddikim are sitting and basically contemplating the existence of their Rebbeinu Shalom. Doesn't sound like exactly the same vision, right? In the vision of the Masifta de Rakia, what exactly are the women doing in Gan Eden? And where exactly is the room for them? If there's the Masifta de Rakia and the Shir, and you go with the Gemara and say to Chafaf that the women aren't being taught because Gilim Lam Tiflis, so what exactly are they doing? If you said that it's Tzadikim Yeshma Teresem V'Rashem and Enemies Veshkina, they're all contemplating the existence of the divine, so that's a different story. So I would just mention that I did wonder about the Gemara there. On Yud the Gemara afterwards, the very next Gemara talks about the Nashim B'mai Zachin. How do the women get into heaven? They're not learning. So I did wonder if that is fundamentally this question of the Masifta de Rakia, what exactly is the vision of the next world? And in certain other religions, they have a vision that in the next world, a man is zeichet to, what seems to be very earthly pleasures, are Ishmaelite cousins. And what are the women zeichet to exactly? Right. Okay. All right. So continues the Gemara. Says the Gemara, we are now Yotes Amud Aleph. The four or five lines down from the top. Aini, are you saying the dead don't know? There was somebody who said something negative about Shmuel, meaning forget Shmuel, forget Abu Shmuel, but somebody said something negative about Shmuel himself. What he said, I don't know, but he said something bad about Shmuel after Shmuel passed away. The Nafal Kanya Mitalola Ubazal Arnaka de and Mamish, a beam from the ceiling came down and hit the guy in the head and he died. So it says more shiny on the kuchabrichu tova bikar. You want to say that this is a proof that the dead know that somehow Shmuel is moving beams and taking the kama. In other words, which would be a contradiction to what we just said. We just said that the dead don't care. I was just explaining why. It's because either in the Masifta de Rakia and they're in a great cheer, or right, maybe Amud Yomi there in the heaven is amazing, or it's a situation where they're mamish being enemies of Eshchina, they're contemplating the essence of what the divine is. Either way, they don't care about what's going on. And yet you see that somebody talked trash about Shmuel, and a beam fell on him. So you see that they do care, you see that obviously you see that they know, but you see that they care, and you see that they have power to do something about it. Says, no, it's not a proof. Because it could be HaKadosh Baruch Hu being Tovei the covet of Shmuel. Doesn't mean Shmuel's doing anything. Hashem is Tovei the covet of Shmuel. Hashem's like, yeah, talking about my Shmuel this way. And so therefore Hashem is the one who caused the beam to come on him. Nothing to do with Shmuel. Shmuel has to be entirely unaware of all of this. I did want to point out that it's very fascinating. Rashi and Tainus on Daf Daled. Rashi, Martrius, the beginning of Tainus says it's not Rashi. Okay, whatever, put that on the side. But the Rashi and Tainus Daled, Rashi says that Tzuvah Me'arabon is a Bacher Chorif. Is a sharp buffer. So now look at the Gemara again. The Gemara wants to bring a raya from Shmuel being talked negatively about that. The beam falls on the guy's head and he dies. That says the Gemara. That's clearly that you know that even the dead, they're aware and they have to pay this and they can take care of it. So it's not a proof because the Rebbeinu Shalom can take care of it. But who's the Rebbeinu Shalom taking care of? Surva Merabanan. The Gemara is saying much broader. The Maisa was a Maisa with Shmuel. Shmuel is one of the greatest Adam Run. But the Gemara's proof is not just limited to people at the level of Shmuel. Says the Gemara, Shiny Tzuva Me Rabbanan the Kutsha Brichot Tova Bikari. Hashem is going to be Tevei the covet of even a Bakar Charif. Even somebody who's not the great person like Shmuel, even somebody in a lesser scale, Hashem will also take care of the covet of such a person. I'd like to make that maybe a shtickle diak over here. Okay, continues the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi, anybody who talks trash about the Talmidei Chachamim after they passed away is going to go to Gehenna. Right? Those that are turned, right? We have talked about Matam V'Karen in terms of Kriyashma, but here we're talking about turning to the side the wrong way. Right? They're crooked. So Hashem is going to help them, move them along. Where? As Oven, the people who have done all this iniquity, Hashem is going to take them to Gehenna. Shalom al Yisrael, right? So there'll be a peace for the Jews to get rid of such people. So afilu b'shosha shalom al Yisrael, even when it's a peace for the Jewish people, Hashem will take care of those that are sinning. Meaning, what are they sinning? What are they doing wrong? They are essentially, and the Gemara is saying, talking negatively about the great rabbis who have passed away, who are no longer with us. Meaning, I guess if they were talking negatively about the rabbis when they were alive, maybe the rabbis could defend themselves, and why are they doing what they're doing? But after they're dead, they can't defend themselves. So that's really not appropriate to be maligning people when they can no longer defend themselves, and so therefore you go to Gehenna. Says the Gemara, a very fundamental and famous Gemara. If you see a Talmid Chacham that didn't aver at night, I'm not 100% sure of what the proximity of this Gemara is to the Gemara before, but it relates to the idea, probably, of not talking trash about the Talmidei Chachamim, right? Because we just said that if you do, after they died, then you're going to go to Gehenna. And now the Gemara is saying, not when they're dead, they're alive. So in Re'isa Talmid Chacham Sha'ava Aver B'Layla, if you see a Talmid Chacham that has done an aver at night, Al Taharher Acharav B'Yom, don't assume that he's an avarian by day. Why Shema Asa Tshuva? Because maybe he did Tshuva. Says the Shema Sakadat. What do you mean? Maybe he did Tshuva. Ela Vaday Asa Tshuva. Vaday, the person did Tshuva. V'ani Mil B'Dvarim Shebegufay. That was when it comes to Dvarim Shebegufay. But when it comes to Mammon, until the money is returned. I remember Maisa heard, I'm not saying any more details about the Maisa, but this Gemara came as a practical matter. Somebody saw a person who was a well-known person in a situation that was clearly not appropriate. This Gemara, whatever it was, I don't know. Maybe it's a Gemara Kedushin on Daf Mem, Rabbi Lo, I don't know. There's a whole thing. In Kedushin on Mem, look at Taisus and Chagi Yudal. I'm not sure. Whatever the reasons were, I don't know. But this, you can kind this Gemara. This is not a situation of a monistic question. Something had clearly the gufa of the person himself. But you don't have to be mahar after the person. Of course, the person did tshuva. Shambasakatai said tomorrow, Vaday asa tshuva, for sure. Whatever it was. But he for sure did tshuva the next day. You don't have to be talking negative about that person because of the fact that a Talmid Chacham doesn't say here a massive tzar. He says a Talmid Chacham who did an avera, for sure he would do tshuva. The Hani Mila says the more, but that's only Dvarim Shebegufay. When it comes to mamnistic questions, you don't have to assume that when you see somebody doing something wrong, when it comes to mamnis, that was resolved, because he has to first give the money back. But if it's not in that sense a ben chaveri issue, an unlamakin type of issue where he's do it himself, so you can assume that he for sure did tshuva. Continues the Gemara. So we have another ma'am from Rabbi Shua ben Levi. This happens to relate also because we just said Rabbi Shua ben Levi before, but also because it deals with the genusan of Talmidei Chachamim. So remember, Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Chafta Makram is based in Minan Akvar Arav. So based in 424 places is putting somebody into Nidoi because of the fact that there was lack of coverage for the rabbi. The Kulan Shanidu Mishnah Sinu, and we learn all of them out from our Mishnah. Amalei Rabbi Lezer, Heicha. Rabbi Lezer asked him, "No, where is this?" So Amar Lei, L'chi Tishkach. Nafak dak v'ashkach klas. So he says, I'm not telling you, go learn it yourself. Go find it. So he went and he found 3. We're going to end up, the Gemara later on is going to say that, in fact, there aren't 24 places like this, but there was a difference between Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Shua ben Levi and how they learned the Mishnah in terms of figuring it out. But basically, what we're trying to now understand is someone who's mezalz with the Talmidei Chachamim, right? We're going to have 3 different situations of this. but really the person should get nidui or should be deserving of getting nidui, even if it's not 100% clear. That's going to be the debate between Rebbe Lezer and Bishum Levi. So the first of the three examples that both of Bishum Levi and Rebbe Lezer agreed are for sure examples of someone's mezalzel on the rabbis, and he's going to go into nidui. What was the first example? Mezalzel netilas yadayim. Right, somebody who's mezalzel and netilas yadayim, somebody who talks negatively about Talmidei Chachamim, or somebody who's too proud of himself. What are the examples? Says the Gemara as follows: What's that example of somebody who talks negatively about Talmidei Chachamim after they passed away? Like yours, there was a machlokes there, the Mishnah and Duyos between a kavim and halal and the rabbis as to whether or not you give mesaita to a giyaris and a meshacheret, somebody who is a convert or somebody who is a freed slave. The Chacham say you don't. You are able to drink the mesaita to a woman who was accused of adultery by her husband, even though she's a convert or a meshacheret. The rabbi said to him, there was a story with a woman who Rashi says her name or her place, Karkamet. Shivcha Mishacharas Yerushalayim. So she was a Shivcha Mishacharas and in Yerushalayim. These are the times of the Beis Hamikdash. V'eshgu Shemaya V'Avtalion, and they gave her to drink from the Meisaita. So what did Akavim and Mahalal respond to the Chachamim and say about this proof? Amarlam Dugma Yishkua. What is Dugma Yishkua? So either it's Machlokes Rashi and the Aruch. Rashi says that what it means is that basically it was talking derogatorily about this situation. Why? Because Shmai and Naftalion were descended from Gerim. So as Rashi notes, that when in Dugma Yishkua, I'll show you doimim lohem ein mishkuach. Shemai and Naftalion think that they're really full Jews and everything because they're from the Jewish people, even though they're descended from converts. So because they feel that they're 100% Jewish and don't like look at me like I'm a descendant of a convert, so they look at this woman also and they gave her a drink because it was like them. Descendant from a convert is not really considered anything less. They're 100% a Jew. The Aruch brings down a different part. It's not a part of Dugma Yishku in that sense that because they were descendant of converts, but rather because Allah is that you don't give converts to drink. So they gave her Dugma. They gave her a Meitzeva. They gave her some sort of a colored water to scare her into thinking that this was really going to be safe to water, so that she should confess, because you know that you don't like to have the woman drink. You want her to confess, so that you shouldn't have to be erasing the Shem Hashem. So they tried to scare her. That's what it was. Either way, so the Mishnah tells us when a du makes niduya, right? They put him in nidoy. They put him in. They ostracized him, and he died in nidoy. The solku based in a savarnei. And they stoned his aron. So this would be a situation where somebody who's mesaper achamitosan shel tzadikim, right? Achamitosan shel tamid chacham after their death. Fine. What's the second example? Now mezalz m'netilas yadayim. We're going to revisit the first example now. Someone who's mezalz m'netilas yadayim. Ma'hi learn. The Mishnah tells us, Rabbi Yehuda Chas Shalom Shekavi Ben Mahal Ala Nesnada. Rabbi Yehuda said, Chas Shalom, you can say a Kavi Ben Mahal went to Nidoi. She'ein Azar and Ellis. The Azar used to be shut down on our Pesach. So many people were coming, and they would have to make divisions in order to be able to get the people to be able to do the Karban Pesach. I'll call all them be Yisrael b'Chachma b'Tayra b'Yiras Ached Kavi Ben Mahal. There's no Jew, right? When the Beit Hamikdash was full of people, that was as amazing in Chachma, Tyra, and U.S. Ched like a Kavim Ma'al. Don't say that a Kavim Ma'al was put into Nidoi. What are we talking about? Esmin Nidoi. Who did they put into Nidoi? Was it Belezer ben Chanoy? What was Belezer ben Chanoy? He was making fun of Nitzias Yadayim. They put a stone on his aron. I mean, that was like stoning his aron. To teach you that whoever dies in Nidoi, they are going to stone his caver. So what does that mean for all practical intents and purposes? It means that either it was Mezalzel in the Tzilas Yadayim or it was Mezalzel in the Kavod Tamid Chachamim, but it could be it was not Rabbi Kavim Mahalal, it could be it was Elazar ben Chanoich. In any event, what you see is two similar situations where people were either denigrating a halacha from the rabbis or denigrating a rabbi, and they were punished. Says the Gemara, the third example of where you see that somebody who is going to be not appropriate treating a rabbi is going to be put into nidui. The third example is Hamegis Daita Klapping Mila, somebody who's a little full of himself. What's the example? To Tanam, we learn in the Mishnah. It's a famous Mishnah in Tainus. Everybody knows the story. You have to go into nidui. If you weren't chayni, because Rani Lachanida, I would have put you into nidui. So what should I do about you? You talk to God like the way a kid talks to his father. Right? You're amazing. You're such a person who can talk to the Rebbeinu Shalom and get what they want. And you can make a whole scene. You can fuss. And you want rain. You want it this way. You want it that way. You're going to make a circle. You can talk to the Rebbeinu Shalom that way. That's being megas daita. That's not the appropriate way to talk to the Rebbeinu Shalom. And nevertheless, because you're chayni, we can't put you into nidui. But really, you should be because of the way you talk. So again, that'll be another example, and it'll be three clear examples from the Mishnah of somebody who was put into nidui or should have been put into nidui for talking negatively either about the Menachem or about the Rebbeinu Shalom or about halachas that the rabbis promulgated. Says the more of a sulak, as that is, these are the only ones. The Tani Rabbi Yosef. We have another example. The Gemara Pesachim, Tadas Shremi, the adulterers of Rome. He would eat a gedim mekulas. What's a gedim mekulas? Basically like eating a korban pesach. But he lived in Rome, and he would make them having like a korban pesach, which could be thought of as ishchutei chutz, as maybe people thinking that this is appropriate to do. So, right, remember, a lot of people have minhag on a Seder night that they won't even eat roasted meat, right? You maybe have seen something like that. People eat chicken only, whatever, because not to get into this kind of situation. He was eating a gedima kol the same way that you would prepare by the Korban Pesach. If you weren't Tardis, I would have declared nidui on you. You mamash eating or training them that you can have kachim machutz. So the Gemara is asking this as a question. You're telling me that you're limited to three places. Here's a fourth place. Says the Gemara, no. It's not a question of Belezer. This is not a Mishnah. This is a Brisa. This is not a Mishnah. So therefore, since it's not a Mishnah, we cannot consider it one of the places. A Mishnah of Masnis and Leka, says the Gemara. Is there really no other places in the Mishnah? Here's another example. If somebody was, this is the Tana Shalach, somebody was breaking up an oven, putting sand in between. So essentially, you don't have one kli. He's putting sand in between each level, so you don't really now have this clear. Blessed tire. Blessed says that's not blessed is tar. It's fine. It's not an issue. And Chacham say no. You still have an oven. This is the Tana of Achanoi. Ma Achanoi, Rabbi Yehuda, Marshmuel, Milam Shekifu Alochas Kachanoi. Vitamu. Right. We're going to have this Gemara later on in our Sunday classes on Perish Baal Peh, but fundamentally, there's a machlokes between the Chachamim and Rabbi Lezer about whether or not this oven can be mekabel tumah or not. Rabbi Lezer said it's tar, and the Chachamim said it's not. The Tanya Oitha Yom Aviu Kol Tire Shetir Rabbi Lezer. The Sar from Lefanah. They brought all the things Rabbi Lezer was matire, and they burned everything in front of him. L'soif Baruch, and then they blessed him, meaning they put him into nidui, and he died in that way. Afilu Hakin nidui. So you see that he went into nidui. And therefore, you see another example from a Mishnah. So, what do you mean? Only three examples of Lezer family. You see a fourth example. Says the Gemara, no. It's not a Mishnah. There's still another brisa. This is not appearing in a Mishnah. So, where do you find the 24 places? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Shua ben Levi Medam Milsal and Milsal. The difference is that Belezer was not Medam Milsal and Milsal. He only looked at the place where they actually said Nidoi. Rabbi Shua ben Levi said no. All the different places in the Mishnah where you see rabbis talking inappropriately, they should have gotten Nidoi because of these three places where you see that they did give Nidoi, they would have given Nidoi, so you can learn out to all the other places that there would have been Nidoi as well. Just the last two lines is nice and the next line from the Mishnah. You shouldn't take out a mace samach l'kriyashma because then people are going to be busy with the mace. They're not going to say kriyashma. But if they already started to bring it out, then you don't mafsik. And he says to Rabbi Yosef, they brought him out. So how can they do it? The people are going to not say kriyashma. Shiny. When it comes to a very important person, then you can take them out to bury them whenever they're ready, and you don't have to worry about saying kriyashma. Have a wonderful day, have a wonderful Shabbat.